Woo! Here's Lauren. Hey, Lauren.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good. How are you? Hi,
Oh, I'm
Jen.
doing all right. Beautiful day and all that.
Lauren, what's up? We're doing this.
I
All of a
know.
sudden it was Tuesday and I thought this would be on Wednesday. I was like,
JenJoy and I have been in like a group chat together
yeah,
for a while now. So this is
Nice, nice. That's
picking
so
up.
cool. You never know like who already knows each other, and it's like it's cool when people already know each other. It looks like we're filling up here in the attendees. We got folks
JenJoy,
rolling in.
do you mind if I present first because I have to do like a Rube Goldberg situation with Keynote
you
and
presented first. That's what we talked about, 100%.
okay, great. Okay, cool. I couldn't remember if that's what we said.
Do your magic.
Cool. So yeah, we're sort of we'll give it another minute here before our official start time
Can I
and
go ahead
just
and present so they don't have to watch me do the good
sure.
rigmarole?
Yeah. No
Pitch,
worries.
pitch it,
Go for
yeah.
it.
All right.
Go, no worries. All right. And
Advance.
then if you need sound, remember you have to click um when you click share. I don't know if you're doing sound or not.
No.
Okay. I'm excited about the dog slide, not to like, look ahead or anything,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Please slideshow.
Mike, you and your team are doing an amazing job.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
yeah, we're really excited. It's like I said in all the emails a million times. It's definitely an experiment.
yeah,
Um and we really hope that it's useful, interesting to people. It was like pretty important to us to um try it online this first time, rather than have like a centralized location and get everybody from New Mexico trying to drive to one place, which, is sort of it's hard, right? New Mexico's big, it's expensive. And so, yeah, we really hope that we learn a lot from this. It goes well. We can sort of hand this off as a blueprint to the
yeah.
EDD to keep doing this and keep growing it, making it bigger and better every year.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's really cool to be sort of on the, feel really good to be able to sort of launch it and have really, really cool folks like yourselves to help us sort of pilot everything here. So yeah, we'll give it like it's 3:31. So let's go ahead and kick it off here.
Cool.
Welcome everybody. If you're just joining us, this is day 2 of the Creative Industries Week. We got a bunch of cool online events. We had a really good first day, learned about the 18 projects that had already been funded with that sort of one-time initial funding for the division. Lots of really cool progress. We learned about folks across state government who are advocates for the creative economy and who are excited to collaborate with the new creative industries division. Let's see, we had a wonderful civic storytelling discussion, really cool, representatives from New Mexico Local News Fund, Mary Charlotte from Radio Cafe, Searchlight New Mexico, Tamara, and Alicia Inez Guzman. Sorry, so many names to keep it track of. And she had a really, really cool story. And then, yeah, wonderful panel with Centinela Traditional Arts and Laura. This is being recorded, so I have to remember everyone's names. Yeah, Laura Lopez. I just like panicked that I was going to say it wrong. But yeah, and really excited for day 2 and excited to sort of launch everything off with JenJoy and Lauren here to talk about the sort of creative production tools of the future and technology for artists and sort of the cutting edge. And we're just going to jump right into it. So, we are being recorded. All the recordings will be available for everybody after the end of the week, including all those ones I just talked about and all the ones to come. And yeah, we're so excited to be joined here by a couple real heavy hitters in sort of advanced technology for artists. So I'm just going to get started, very short introductions, and let our panelists here sort of show off what they do, which is super, super cool. So first up, we have Lauren Cason, co-founder of Refract Studio, and she's got a whole presentation to show us. So we're just gonna kick it right to Lauren. Thank you so much for being here today, Lauren.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so I'm Lauren, and I'm the co-founder and creative director of Refract Studio. We're a small emerging technology studio in Santa Fe. And before founding Refract a couple years ago, I had a pretty eclectic career. I was a prototyper at Apple. I was the XR director at Meowwolf. And I spent a really long time before that actually making video games. And at Refract, our clients have included places like Google Arts and Culture, Google's Innovation Lab Area 120, Space 10, which is a Kia's Innovation Lab, Snap Inc., and more, including some local places. We work primarily in augmented reality at Refract Studio, so I'm going to give a quick rundown of what that means, some projects that we've built that have been very New Mexico based, and also some New Mexicans who I think are doing some really cool things with 3D digital work. So first off, what is augmented reality? What it's not the metaverse. So metaverse, it's a really fuzzy term. It's not a term that I usually use for the technologies that we use because no one has ever really totally been able to define to me what that technology is and what metaverse means. So I really like the term spatial computing. And the type of spatial computing that I use the most is augmented reality. And augmented reality is any technology that is superimposing a computer-generated image on a user's view of the real world. And that can happen with something called pass-through with video. It can happen on a phone. It can happen in a headset. So if you've ever used a face filter on Snapchat and made yourself a puppy, or if you've placed a piece of furniture to check if it fit in your apartment, or if you've played Pokemon Go and you've seen the little Pokemon all running around in a park, then that's augmented reality. So augmented reality, or AR, it involves virtual objects in the real world, and it can go way beyond a simple face filter. It has applications in museums for being able to have overlays of information. It has applications for education. It even has really interesting applications in medicine. I'm not going to get into all the ways that you can use this tech. That could be its own talk. But what are some augmented reality projects that Refract has built here in New Mexico? So one example would be this. This was a piece that we worked on for Meowwolf. And this transports the viewers into the world of Obsidianopolis, built by artist Janelle. I think it's still live at the Santa Fe exhibit. You can buy these little fans and do the experience. It's also can be location-based and bigger than a fan. This is also for a Meowwolf exhibit. This was a headset piece. Most of our work in New Mexico has actually been location-based. For example, this piece. This is live right now at the Santa Fe airport. So you can see a Colombian mammoth wander the tarmac at the new Santa Fe airport terminal. So Colombian mammoths actually used to roam right here in New Mexico, and we consulted with some scientists from the Natural History Museum to make sure that he was accurate and correct, and you get a little intro to what they would have been doing back in the Ice Age. Another location-based project we worked on was about historic roadside markers here in New Mexico. So we've all driven past these. I personally really love them. And we worked with local artists like Ebony Isis Booth to bring these signs to life in XR. So this sign was for Anita Scott Coleman, who was a Black poet at the turn of the century in Silver City. She wrote a lot about what the Black experience was like in the Southwest, and her work is generally associated with the Harlem Renaissance. And Ebony Isis Booth did a performance of one of Anita's poems, and the sign gets replaced by a portrait of Anita. You hear Ebony's performance, you see this bloom of a forest around the sign when you're standing in front of it. And that project led to a project called Ojos Diferentes. So this project was Webby nominated, and it actually won Snapchat's Moonshot Award, meaning they thought it was, in 2023, the most innovative project on all of Snapchat. Ojos Diferentes brought together 8 new Mexican, indigenous, Norteño, and Chicana artists to reinterpret monuments, tourist sites, and hidden historic locations throughout Santa Fe using Snap AR. And Ojos is the culmination of a collaboration between Refract Studio, the Santa Fe Arts and Culture Department, Santa Fe historian Valerie Rangel, and all of these collaborating artists. So each artist was paired with a historic site, specifically chosen because tourists are likely to encounter those sites on walking tours of Santa Fe. And those artists were asked to react to those sites, and they all took it in really, really different directions. So Aaron Kianate takes you on this journey through the history of the Santa Fe River, ending in indigenous spacecraft taking off from the plaza. Paz and his daughter Cristal remind us of the Aztec dancers who used to practice in the Barrio Nalco. Artemisio Romero E. Carver envisions a giant anti-colonization sky figure in reaction to a plaque that celebrates cowboys winning the West. Virgil transports you to the indigenous futurist world of the Watchmen. A statue of St. Francis on the plaza is replaced with a statue of Popeye by Cliff Fragua, and he talks to you about his personal relationship to both men. Lady Shug takes you on a campy drag tour of La Fonda and teaches you about missing and murdered indigenous women. Olivia Romo talks to you about what nuclear energy did to pueblos while standing at the door of Oppenheimer's office. And Natachi Momode Gray tells you about her relationship to Guadalupe. And Natachi was pregnant when she built this piece, and it explores her own impending motherhood. These experiences are all free. They are all outdoors in publicly accessible spaces. And again, they are in common locations for walking tours of Santa Fe. And they bring contemporary, very rigorous history from Valerie with a vibrant cross-section of contemporary New Mexican artists whose work you'd be lucky to encounter at a museum, much less on a park bench. Something else I think is really cool about working with AR and why I like working with it as somebody who works a lot with artists is how many modalities it can incorporate. So for Ojos Diferentes, we got the chance to work with painters and poets and dancers and sculptors and all sorts of artists. And it comes together as a very cohesive tour. You can take 3D scans of things. You can incorporate historic photos. You can incorporate audio. It's a very versatile medium. And lastly, I want to highlight some really cool humans who are making spatial work here in New Mexico. First off is Aquila Martinez. If you haven't heard of her, I'm sure you will. She also goes by Glittering World Girl. She was chosen as the rising star at the New Mexico Women in Tech Awards this year. She's an artist and culture bearer from the Navajo Nation whose new media work represents indigenous ways of life in conjunction with preserving specifically Native cultures and languages. Her work is really, really cool. There's also Digital Ant Media, led by creative director Allison Johnson. Digital Ant has worked on projects such as Talking Tintypes, which is reclaiming an old medium to tell the news stories of Native Americans, and also the Fort Worth lynching tour that seeks to generate community healing through memorial activism by honoring the memory of Mr. Fred Roots, and that's read by creative director Allison Johnson. Something else I think is really cool happening here in New Mexico, the Fuse Makerspace and CNM Ingenuity. They do boot camps to learn things like IoT and software development. There's people who do AR there. It's through the community college. One of my favorite things about our state is the strength of our community colleges. You do not need to go to a private boot camp to learn how to make this kind of tech that I just showed to you. There are very affordable, high quality training options with scholarships available right here in Albuquerque online. Yeah, but I think that's one of the really great things about New Mexico. There's like so many people doing interesting stuff with spatial computing and 3D software in New Mexico. IAIA built a VR BFA exhibition during the pandemic when they couldn't actually have a show. Santa Fe-based artist Mayala Tamori does anti-colonial digital activism by taking photogrammetry scans of looted art in museums, specifically this one was the Benin bronzes, and making them publicly available. Robbie Firestone does VR performances. Shandine's out here building the cutest video games that you ever saw, and she heads up the IGDA, New Mexico. It's a super exciting time to be in New Mexico working on this technology, and there's so much that you can do with it, from entertainment to research to healthcare. I'm personally super excited to see where people take it. That's my information. I'm going to pass it over to JenJoy. We're available for work. We do a lot of stuff with cultural institutions, museums, helping people figure out if spatial computing is right for them at all, digital twins, and more. Yeah, passing it back to JenJoy.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Lauren. Wow, that was incredible. That's so cool. That is Yeah, that's just so cool. I have so many questions, but we'll get to that. Thank you so much. We got somebody in the Q&A just wanted to point out Fuse is open to the public, not just C&M students, which is awesome, super awesome. We love community colleges, and we also, I put this in the chat, but we got Brian Rayshap from C&M Ingenuity tomorrow, as well. So that is so cool, and so excited to keep it rolling with JenJoy Roybal, co-founder of Searchlight Art, and it's done really amazing things. So we'll hand it off to JenJoy. Thank you so much for being here, JenJoy.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us, and thanks for the whole team for putting this amazing event on. I've really enjoyed it. Everybody, we are so lucky to have Lauren and the Refract Studio team in New Mexico. What they're doing is it's such a beautiful project. Not everybody is using this technology for ethical and for mining our culture in a respectful and, you know, equitable way. And I just really want to just shout out to you and your team for doing the work that you're doing. And thank you so much for sharing all of that. I'm JenJoy Roybal. I'm a co-founder of Searchlight.art. We're a Web3 organization, a decentralized autonomous organization in Web3. And I'll get into what all that means. But basically, we started out of the pandemic. A bunch of us were, you know, held up. We started learning a lot about Web3, digital art, putting our own studio art on the blockchain, which is just a fancy technology. And it led to us, a bunch of us curating shows and really creating events and things that we could participate on through the pandemic and then subsequently thereafter. A decentralized autonomous organization is basically a way of organizing in a way that there's not a central hierarchy. And so while I'm a co-founder and I initiate a lot of projects, we have a lot of people all over the world initiating projects all the time. So it's kind of nice to be part of an organization that has a life beyond just myself. I'm going to share a bunch of different projects today, just some short video clips. It is going to be an absolute flyby, but the goal is just to really show you the plethora of things that are happening out there, how people are utilizing these things, and also to put a little bit of a spotlight on Web3 and decentralized autonomous organizations, which I feel is a very important part of the future of creative industries. And the first project I'm going to share with you is true identity. A big part of being on digital life is your identity. We invited artists to showcase their interpretation of what identity meant for them. And all we're going to do is just take a quick flyby through the gallery that we created in Spatial IO. The really nice thing about Web3 and operating in the digital space, my loud music, is that I'm able to curate and work with artists all over the world, artists here in New Mexico, and we can showcase a lot more artists than you would typically be able to do in a brick and mortar space. This is very exciting to me, and so you'll see a lot of diversity in the kind of works that we share. So you get a sense there's spatial works similar to what Lauren has shared. That was one project that we put together. I'm going to also fly by figure glyphs. Figure glyphs, we invited artists to share interpretations around the figure. This was just kind of a tipping the hat to the canon of the figure being used in art in general. And I'll just show a quick video of that. In this particular project, we had to build our own space in it's called Voxels. It's also a spatial program that Lauren mentioned. And so that was interesting in the sense that a collective came together to decide on how the space was going to be built. It's our atelier where we experiment and try different things. We curate both our work from the collective, but we bring in other works that are significant to the space into this project. And I'll share all these links with you. I'm not going to linger here too long because I just want to give you a sense of the kind of collective participation that we have in our projects. States of the Metaverse, I'll show real quickly.
Welcome. The States of the Metaverse exhibition explores the current and future possibilities of virtual reality and its impact on our lives and society. The exhibition aims to showcase the ways in which individuals and communities are navigating and creating new realities within these immersive environments. At a time when the line between physical and virtual experiences is becoming increasingly blurred, this experience invites viewers to consider the potential for the metaverse to shape our perceptions of reality, identity, and community. It features works from artists, designers, and technologists who are pushing the boundaries of what is possible within these new digital landscapes. The exhibition invites viewers to reflect on the various states or experiences that exist within the metaverse, including those that are playful, educational, artistic, and even political. The works on display range from immersive experiences to digital artworks and virtual performances. Please check out the Portal Garden on the top floor. Ultimately, the States of the Metaverse exhibition invites us to consider the future of reality and the role we will play in shaping it. As we continue to spend more time in virtual spaces, it is important to consider the cultural, social, and political implications of this rapidly evolving technology.
I'm going to stop it there. The point of sharing that is to color a little bit about the interrogation and investigation that we try to do as artists are trying to penetrate and explore and prototype and discover what's possible with this technology. And then we did a whole project where we taught a ton of artists how to make artwork for domes. And that's another kind of immersive experience. Some of you may have been to an IMAX theater or been in AIA, the school where they have a dome. We worked with the team, the Vortex Community Circle. There are a bunch of experts from all over the world who just know dome immersive film and experiences. And we taught all of our artists how to create these pieces. And so we translated their work into domes. We did a project called Domance right around the holiday of Valentine's. And we created 3 virtual domes, Limerence, I think, what are the 3? Limerence, Innocence, and Essence. And it was the idea of going on the journey of love. And so artists were invited to submit works for each of these domes. While we're here, you'll see we also had spatial galleries for each of these domes, and you can always come to this page and kind of dive into those. But what I want to show you is just give you a brief sense of what that vibe was all about. And there's the video for that. And apparently it was the first time that domes had been created in the metaverse. I'm not sure that's actually true, but the extent of the programming was pretty experimental. And so we had 3D elements, we had events in the space. Of course, this is during the pandemic, so this was very well attended. And then subsequently, we actually are able to tour this show. We had it shown in LA at Dome West Fest. We had it shown in Caracas during a community event there. We have it shown in Miami at a Dome experience there and at South by Southwest last year. So I won't show too much of it. It's just, you sit in these pieces, you get to really be part of it. It's just such a great feeling. And I'll just stop it there. And I just have two more projects, or maybe I'm running out of time a little bit, but let me just show you two more projects. This one is similar to what Lauren was showing, where we did an AR showcase in the Library of San Diego. And as a former public art administrator, I did a lot of physical public art for the city of San Jose and for Chicago and New York. So to be able to invite so many different voices to insert their artwork into a library was very freeing. And so we invited our artists to highlight either books they had read or anything that kind of like stimulated them about the story around libraries. And so we had about 30 artworks throughout during this Web3 conference. The last one I'd like to show you is by artist Mel Chin. This is done in Times Square in 2018. I love his work. I think he's a beacon for this kind of work in a sense. Well, actually, after all the work I saw you do, Lauren, I don't know. But what you're going to see here is what happens if the snow caps melt and what do we see in Times Square. And I'm going to zip through this really quickly. But first we see a boat coming together. There's this wonderful element of surprise. And then as we continue to go along this journey, more boats and crafts start to arrive. Before you know it, it's a cacophony of boats, and you're looking up at the horizon where the water will be, right? And now we're starting to see some elements of the sea creatures that might be around you. And so this was just, this is talking about environmental awareness around climate change. So I wanted to show you Mel Chin's piece. And I'll end it there with all my fun, cool stuff. And the last thing, I just had a few thoughts to share before I end it. And it feels like there are two tracks here that we're dealing with when we're talking about these the future of using creative tools. And one is the fun track. So collaborative, imaginative, exciting, delightful. Why should I engage? Because it's a blast and there's so many rabbit holes to go down. The other one is very serious. So, with Red3, the reason why we like to use it as far as our cohort is it's fundamentally open source. It lacks a central control. It's dominated by stakeholders versus shareholders. It's globally accessible, so it's more inclusive. There is a permissionless innovation to it that makes it more inclusive. And it's not bounded by geography. And so, there's this incredible opportunity for freedom in this space for a lot of artists. And for us at Searchlight, we were able to elevate a lot of artists in parts of the world that they'd never see their work or have access to certain markets to sell their work. And now they're doing very well using blockchain and digital art. The last thing I wanted to mention was I wanted to reference futurist Robert Turczek. He was the keynote speaker for Creative Exchange in 2022. And he talks about this idea of dematerialization and vaporization. And it gets to the crux of like, why do we care about creatives in creative industries? And the dematerialization we see obviously in the iPhone. All those tools that we used to use are now down to one phone. The vaporization refers to the immediate disintegration of whole industries going away because of the dematerialization. So we're definitely entering into an era of dematerialization, moving into a digital era that has both positive and negative impacts, right? He references Kevin Kelly, who's the executive director of Wired magazine, who talks about this third platform or breakthrough that's happening, the first being the web, the second being mobile, and now the digitizing of the world, basically. And what's really kind of ominous about what he says about this is that the people who control this next technology are going to be amongst the wealthiest and most powerful people in the world. So this is like we're seeing another major event of power structure changing. And creatives have an incredible role to play on this. Robert in his keynote warns about the impacts and the legacy of colonization and how that creates inequities. which believe me, in New Mexico, we know this, right? We see it everywhere in the algorithms of AI, all of that. He also talks about there's no bills of rights in the digital society. And so how do we create opportunities for us to kind of equalize the power structures as these things become invested in and more powerful overall? And the last thing I will say is, the emphasis on Web3 and DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, as tools to be exercising as a way to kind of push against this centralization of power that will inevitably happen. We see it with Meta. We see it with many other big companies all over the world right now, especially in China. And so what I want to emphasize is this clarion call. It's not just about the fun stuff, about cool things and doing fun things. There is an inherent movement here to make sure that as we build a digital society, that it is more inclusive and equitable, and that more people around the globe and in rural areas have access to these technologies and have access to share their voice. And so I just want to encourage everybody to participate, to, learn some of these tools, to anything that you do is going to help and make a difference. And it's incumbent upon us to be conscious and ethical engagers of this technology. And that's where I'll leave it. Kind of important.
Yeah, I mean, super important. Amazing. Thank you so much, JenJoy. That's super cool. I mean, and just yeah, the the topics and the narratives and the ideas there are huge. And just I swear I'm gonna do more than this, but like one of the implications of that dematerialization that you're talking about is around sort of data collection, right? And the way that we are turning into so much data. And I think folks in New Mexico, that's something that there's some pretty intense historical legacies, right? To put it lightly. And tomorrow we've got Nady Dominguez and Brian Osterloh talking about sort of empowered sort of community ownership of data. And I think that that is a really, really, really important piece of all of this. And yeah, I want to sort of dive into all of this because just such amazing examples, such amazing artists. And I want to start maybe with just the very basic question for folks just getting into this, right? Maybe coming from more traditional art backgrounds. Where do you even start, right? Are there guilds? You mentioned C&M. What are the names of, I mean, maybe that's too granular, but like where do you start if you're like, wow, this is super cool, I want to incorporate this into my practice? And that's, yeah, really for either of you.
I'll defer to Lauren first.
So if you do not have qualms with social media, then most of the large social media companies have some sort of AR like studio thing. So there's Lens Studio for Snapchat, there's Spark AR for Instagram, TikTok has one. The trade-off there is you're asking people to be on that platform in order to experience that, though that's not actually true now for Snapchat. There's ways to do that with web AR. And I would say download one of those tools and just play around with it because those are specifically built for making augmented reality. And then if you really want to do something in web AR or if you want to do something on a headset, then you can get into Unity or A-Frame. Eighth Wall is so expensive that I would not even mess with it. But there's start with one of those. Even if you don't feel like you want to associate with a social media company or build work on a social media platform, their tools will give you the sort of the base that you can go use other tools with.
Cool. And JenJoy put a nice doc in the chat for everybody, just with some tools and content to get started. What about, let me ask either of you, in New Mexico right now, are there any statewide guilds or, groups collectives, things that people can sort of connect with? Because I know we've got, folks all over New Mexico here, right? Like, and there's really amazing stuff happening. And so yeah, yeah. Do y'all know anything about anything like that? Yeah.
Well, I will say for anybody can join searchlight.art. There's a lot of resources and education there. We do a lot of onboarding and teach-ins. We teach each other everything. So definitely start there at any level, any language. And then Lauren and I are part of a group. It's Women X New Mexico, basically. And we're an art and technology group.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
and we're interested in elevating women's work in any no matter where they are in their career. And so we'll be doing a call for participation and want to expand that to more people out of around New Mexico. It started here in Santa Fe because we were folks looking for each other and trying
Right.
to like have that affinity and everything. And so we'll definitely include more on that. But what else, Lauren? I know you know more there.
There's the IGDA, the Game Developers Association. Shondine and Ryan Woodward have been running that for like years now. It's not specifically spatial computing, but like a lot, like anybody who's been doing spatial computing for a really long time, most of us came from video games because it's very
Right.
similar technologies where you're using like Unity or something like that. So there's a good amount of crossover in terms of the people who are building anything with spatial computing, the people who are in the IGDA or game developers generally here in New Mexico. The Economic Development Board has some folks on it who are just generally like VR friendly.
Oh, cool.
So it's not a guild or anything, but I'd say if you're interested in VR, like email them and be
Cool.
friendly because they're super nice. They'll respond to you. So
Nice. It doesn't have to be a guild. That's just the word that popped into my head because it felt like I feel like there's lots of guilds out there around stuff like this. Is this the chapter of the IGDA that you're referencing?
let's see.
They in the chat that out of affiliated or somehow with Doña Ana Community College. Is that one?
I don't
Or is
think we
that
have.
just a student one?
I think that's just a student one.
Okay. That was just the first thing that came up when I was looking for New Mexico. But yeah, that's those yeah. Those are great resources for folks. Let me
Well,
ask you. Oh, sorry,
Well,
go ahead.
I just want to emphasize this, this idea of dematerialization and being decoupled from geography. Like you could literally get a lot of tons of information for free through YouTube channels, listening in on Twitter spaces, participating in Discords. Discord is another social platform. Um, I think just being curious and following a rabbit hole can lead you down an incredibly educational space. And for artists who are just, if you're a traditional artist just doing paintings, there's ways to get things up on AR with that. There's ways to just get your stuff minted on a blockchain. And it's not the gap of doing that isn't that complicated if you watch a YouTube video and all of that. So utilize the tools and don't be beholden to like, I have to go to a place.
Right.
I really encourage you to utilize the internet.
Right. That makes sense. That makes a ton of sense. Let me ask you, Lauren, about some of the projects you were showing with these artists you worked with, and they're so cool. Let me since we are in, economic development, let me ask you about the economics of all that. Were those projects like publicly funded? And did the artists I mean, I imagine the artists got paid and everything. You know what I'm saying? How did that all work in terms of getting those projects off the ground? Did someone come to you? Did you go after them? You know what I'm saying?
So we've done a couple of these history-based projects. We've done the sign one here. We did one in Boston with the Library of Congress. We did one here with Ojos Diferentes. And with the sign one, that one was funded by Snapchat. Um,
Oh,
so and with all of these, generally the way that it's worked is that I'm and my co-founder Sam, we're the developers and generally project managers. So a technology company or a government institution comes to us and says, hey, we want to do a technology kind of thing. This is generally the realm we want to do it in. We'll go find historians and artists and contract with them. Generally, one of the things that we feel pretty strongly about is that people maintain ownership of their work. We just license the work to use in the project, but we never seek ownership of anything. And for a host of different tastes, that one was funded not by a grant. I'm struggling to remember the name of the kind of funding that we got, but it was from the Santa Fe Arts and Culture Department.
Okay, okay, cool.
Saw a question in the chat that I would love to answer if I
Yeah,
could.
go for it. Yeah, we're hitting that time to answer some questions. We got some good ones, so go for it.
Yeah, Susan's question, are we concerned about the environmental impacts of AI and XR? Absolutely, yes, we are. Um, AI, so one of the things that a lot of people don't realize about AI is it has like a lot of the same environmental problems that early days blockchain had, where the energy use that it takes, like to make a call on ChatGPT, is enormous. It is so expensive to do anything with AI in terms of its energy consumption, and that problem is not solved. And we should absolutely be asking questions about that, and that should be like at the forefront of any conversation about AI is the environmental impact it has.
Hmm.
XR, also yes, because it's devices, right? So a lot of headsets. I used to be a prototyper in hardware at Apple, and that was like one of the things that I really struggled with was how much stuff gets generated when you're making devices. I think I've seen some arguments about XR about being able to create really large scale experiences without large scales of stuff. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, I do think that both of those are really like, that's an important question to be asking.
I'm gonna let's go. I have a question, but I'm gonna let the folks defer to the folks in the chat here. So we got from first I want to mention we got Amy Taylor mentioned ECEP Alliance, which is a statewide emerging media and creative technology educational pathway that will be available to all New Mexico schools in the 2025-2026 school year. So that's pretty cool, pretty exciting, worth diving in more, learning more about that. And then moving over to the Q&A from Lynn Johnson, we're asked a couple questions, some big questions. One, how can this work? And Lynn means both Web3 as well as the AR work or any other realms where art and tech meet. How can that work deepen engagement IRL? So I'm guessing that's sort of on the human to human and human in their environment, our environment level, which is a big, important question. And then for young people interested in this work, how would you prepare them to think about workforce development or entrepreneurship in this work, right? So sort of going back to what we were talking about, Lauren, folks were coming to you after you had sort of developed this reputation, for the quality of your work, et cetera, right? So those are both huge questions. So whoever would like to tackle either of those.
I'll start quickly. So how can this deepen IRL? And I think it's what I found interesting about using the AR project or doing AR that's also place-based is we did at South by Southwest, we did it where we had all these artworks. We had a virtual art walk, very similar to Lauren's projects, but at each one they had to do a proof of presence, which was just a button to press through this platform we were using. And after they got a certain amount, they were able to get access to like this sweet secret garden concert. And so that's when everybody was running around trying to find the artworks, get proof of presence, a pop, and then everybody ended up in real life at a concert to enjoy, what they had just experienced. And so I feel like tying to in real life and being creative about that is really important.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's
Go
sort
ahead,
of
Lauren.
like like super Pokemon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the reason why I love AR versus a lot of other technology mediums right now is because it's so much about the space. Like everything we do is location based. And then the stuff that I find really exciting is where you're asking people to experience a different layer of that place. And also that it currently kind of sits in a little bit of a legal gray zone where you can put AR installations on things, and if somebody doesn't like that, it's really hard to remove it. Actually, one of the things that I showed you today, I won't say exactly which one, but the people who own that land don't like that art. They don't want it there, but they can't. There's no legal standing to have it removed. There's really interesting protest art. I mean, like the stuff that Maiawa is doing with like being able to scan objects that were stolen. I think just yeah, AR is so much about as much as you can be about the real world when you're working with digital stuff. And that's what I love about it. And then the second question about entrepreneurialism, with AR, at least like most of the people making AR right now are kind of one person shops. They tend to be like it's a lot of folks like myself who like maybe had an art background and liked to tinker with computers and are like a little bit jill of all trade I really like AR because it's pretty forgiving if you're a beginner because the projects tend to be very small and very contained. I built terrible bad code Rube Goldberg machines that anybody who opened that file and like looked at what was written would be shocked. But usually these things are short-lived. They only have to work for a little while, and they're small projects. So I think it's a great place for a beginner who's interested in sort of diving into new media.
I love that. I wanted to add, we worked with a company where we were watching a rocket launch, and we had people in the space looking at this. And then we also had people who were able to join us virtually. And so we could see people from different parts of the world as we were also interacting with each other. And so it creates this very
Mm,
interesting cross pollination around, I get to relate to somebody in their own space if I decide to portal myself into their augmented reality experience and vice versa in a way that we've never been able to do on such a fast timeline or in real time, really. So I think that's also we're gonna see more of that. And because we're gonna see more of that, I feel like for young people, understanding the politics around space is also kind of really interesting to your point, Lauren. It's like how, I like the sort of trickster Cocopelli factor of being able to layer other people's meanings on different places in a way
mm,
that it's always just been layered on by a certain authority. I love that. And I think that the more people can do that, you can switch channels in a given place. And then now the space you're standing in has so much more color and varied, experience that you would have never known. And I think expanded reality is just going to continue to do that. So young artists should be participating, playing, having fun with that idea, and not just in a Pokemon sense.
right, right, and like in a more substantial sense. Um, I I want to ask, and I think this sort of ties into Alema Albert Neal's question, um, where they ask, is AR, VR tech primarily visual, or are there applications in existential consciousness creating the overall sense of being in space and time? Which, it's just a very simple, straightforward question, real yes or no answer. Um, um,
I love the question though.
it's an incredible question.
That's awesome.
And I would love to tie that question in and follow up on something that you mentioned, Lauren, about sort of this legal gray zone. because, and I'm trying to think about the best way to put this in a state-sponsored webinar. Like like the history of New Mexico, right? And like the history of land and who owns the land is quite complicated. And I wonder how much AR um, represents an opportunity to sort of reclaim, and this is some ways that this is the work you were just showing, and both of you were showing, but how much this technology represents an opportunity to sort of reclaim that which has been taken away from people, and and sort of what the or whether that is maybe too like tech utopian kind of a perspective, um, and 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 just what the pathways are there in thinking about who owns this nebulous floating space above a physical space. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I think that the places that I get excited by are people, um, you know, looking at a space differently, but also I think it's absolutely prudent to look at whose technology are you building with, right? It is very difficult to build outside of the large companies like Meta and Snapchat and Google, unless you are like a truly incredible engineer. Um, and like that's not great. There's just no way around that. But I don't think that means like don't make the work. One of the artists who we worked with in Ojos Diferentes, we had a conversation with her about this, and sort of like, well, how do you feel about making something on Snapchat? And she said, well, I speak Spanish. Like I don't speak like whatever my actual indigenous language would have been. And that her feeling was that using the medium um, in that moment for that piece of work that she was creating was appropriate. But yeah, it's complicated.
Yeah. Are there any folks doing interesting work? Because I think about a place like Shiprock, right? And like it's a sacred space. And the people who've been there a long time don't want people climbing on it, and for good reason, right? And there are stories around these spaces that sort of are embedded in the communities that have lived around these spaces for a long time, right? And are there any is there any interesting work being done around sort of this new frontier, like regulating who gets to put like another layer of stuff on AR?
No, but absolutely somebody should be doing that. Uh,
I mean, I think that's an interesting project because, and this is the issue around vaporization, where all of a sudden something's gone and we haven't even thought about what our next steps are for the future. And so, like, if we had a project going on where we're exploring what does the future look like for space when you have you can have a million different layers on one place, on one data, like one geographic point. And we have not I have not seen anything out there that really, strikes the imagination about how to handle that. And it's just people are just doing it and we're seeing what happens. So that's an interesting project that's needs to be tackled.
Yeah, I mean, it strikes me that New Mexico is one of the best places
Well,
to
an
try to
artist should
tackle
be
that.
leading that conversation, in my
Right,
humble opinion.
right,
there's the XR Guild, which is led by Avi Barziv and some other like XR folks who have been around a long time, and they are like I think they're putting some money towards legislation, but I think yeah, this happening at state levels especially is going to be really important. So yeah, important questions. If we're allowed to put something over a statue in Santa Fe, somebody with other intentions can do that at Shiprock. So it's double-edged
right.
sword.
Right. And let me sort of end then sort of steering in that direction. we talk a lot about what technology can do for artists, right? But in this conversation is getting into what can, and it's not like artists are some special class of people who are magically more ethical than everyone else, right? But what can sort of the practices of people who come from art first versus technology first bring to this discussion of ethics around these tools, right? I mean, we're in a crazy time for, content production, right? Does that question make sense? Like, what do you feel like artists can bring to that conversation?
Well, there has been a really great practice of social impact artists for some time now, who have been doing the work in the communities, who have been doing cultural work similar to what Lauren was sharing. And I think that those types of artists who are exercised in those things in communities and community work and translating that in creative and interesting ways that accentuate values, stories, nuance, all of these kind of things. I think there's a huge group of artists and creatives that are ripe for pushing these conversations and trying to create as ethical and equitable digital society as possible. I'm a biased chick. Like I'm all about, I've worked with so many artists. I feel like they have the experience, the generalized like genius because they do operate in so many ways. So many artists do this. I just feel like that creative path is like going to bloom now in terms of its real impact on society in because I do think they need to be addressing these directly. It's just going to be essential. And yesterday, Danica from Meow Wolf, who is their social impact director,
Formerly, former.
former, so that's right. But she emphasized how important creatives are going to be, and people say this in a very generalized manner. And I don't think how people understand how deeply important the whole practice of art, the art and creatives, and I don't care what field you're in this sense, the impact that's going to have moving forward is so significant to me. And I think Danica gets that. And, people say it, but it's a deep, deep reality that I think can be overemphasized.
Absolutely. No, I mean, great.
I'm all
Yeah.
passionate about it, but
I mean, yeah, I think that probably everybody here in attendance is passionate about that too. And we've got somebody in the chat who said, look into Dr. Megan Bang's Learning in Places project. They explore place-based informal education. So yeah, that's a little resource to go check out. Um, ah, let's see. I had something else and it completely slipped my mind.
I
Yeah,
mean,
this is just, oh, sorry, go
one of your
ahead.
questions was what do not what does the technology, how can the technology, impact the art, but how can art impact technology? And I don't know if I
Right.
answer that. Lauren, if you have thoughts about that. Um,
Um, yeah, I mean, before I did sort of this kind of tech stuff, I did storyboarding, um, and I was an illustrator, and I feel like so much more of that skill set is what I use on the daily than code, because what kind of work we do is usually sort of like what might the future be like 10 years from now, right? Like that's the other thing about this technology is it's very nascent. We're still figuring out how it works. That was what my job was at Apple. I used to say that my job was doing sci-fi theater for executives. We would set up these like elaborate ruses of what this technology might be like in 10 years or that technology so they could figure out if they wanted to invest in the silicon. And like that was theater, it was drawing, it was storyboarding, it was, yeah, it was that, all of that. And that when you're figuring out how you want a technology to exist in your life and a space and a state, and the piece of land, like you've got to be able to imagine what that's going to be like, right? And that's what artists do.
Yeah, that's really beautifully said, Lauren. Thank you for saying that, and JenJoy as well. Just really, really awesome, great discussion. I remember the thing I was going to say, which is one thing I noticed that both of you brought up in thinking about this and sort of wrestling with this is the importance of being in community with other artists, right? And like advocating together, and like this work has an inherently um isolating component to it, right? You're sitting there at your computer and you're like in Unity or whatever. But this like in the world, like this advocacy effort and shaping this future, it's like it's so clear how much it's going to take artists working with each other, you know, in collective ways that make sense to them. And so I'm happy that you both sort of pointed that out. Um, yeah, I mean, this is really we're just about at time here. And I feel yeah, yeah, I feel good about saying I feel bad about because like what Lauren said was like so much more eloquent, but um just thank you both again. And is there any sort of final thoughts from either of you as we sort of send folks out? You've done such a wonderful job giving people so much to explore. And thank you for your generosity and sort of making yourselves available to folks. Um, Lauren, you put your contact info up, um, and I think you did as well, JenJoy. So, any sort of last thoughts here?
Uh, I guess.
Well, I mean, I just want to, for me anyway, I think right now Web3 and digital art on the blockchain is riddled with a lot of problems. But I just wanted to emphasize like the technology and the ambition of it all. The project itself it has a ton of legs and a ton of potential. And I just want to encourage creatives and artists to really explore Web3 overall. And there's definitely a place for that in terms of balancing the scales of where power will lie in the next 10 to 20, 30 years or
Abs
less.
right, or less. Absolutely.
That's what I
Um,
want to end with.
yeah, well said. Well said.
Explore Web3.
Yeah. Well, thank you both so much. I really, really appreciate it, Jen Joy and Lauren. I'm going to go ahead and go off to empowering youth creative development with True Kids One, ZYEP, and Moving Arts Española, which is going to be a great conversation. I invite folks to follow me there. And yeah, thank you both so much. And well, we'll definitely keep talking about this, I'm sure, for the
You're
next
killing it, Mike.
many
Thank
years.
you.
Thank you all.
Love
Take
it.
care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.